the truth. Even believers who tithe, even believers who give, believers in Jesus Christ, they will give, and the rest of their money has no direction.
No direction.
It has no direction.
That's facts. You're nice again, but that's facts. Another example of a poverty mentality, feeling like you never want to get out the ghetto, the hood. And you know what? It can just be a state where it's a poverty area, where it's a slumlords. You constantly having these slumlords. That's a poverty mentality because you feel like you can't get out. Come on. I've been there, done that. Yeah. So we speaking from experience. Yeah. That's a poverty mentality. You do not have to continue to stay in a slump. You don't. Yeah.
Here's another one. A person with a poverty mentality is a person that can't keep a stable job. I guess, how can you work on your finances when you can't work committedly at your own job? I probably just made a word. But you can't commit to working at your own job, and you go from job to job to job to job, and then have no work. And then go to job to job to job. Like that person is unstable as water. That's the spirit. The scriptures just came to my spirit.
Unstable as water. Yes, unstable as water.
That person has no stability. Go ahead.
That's
what you got?
Good. Another one. Spending $2,000 on some red bottoms and have no life insurance. Come on, somebody.
Wow. That's
$2,000. I see them in red bottoms. But don't have a bucket of pee in and a window to throw it out. No life insurance.
I guess if they croak, you got to sell the red bottoms to
somebody
cover
can sell them. I know if it's one of my family members. I'm telling you right now, I'm going in your closet before I go in my bank to pay for your funeral.
Yeah. Another one is always relying on government assistance. Like always relying on food stamps. Like always relying on the government to put out and never do anything further. Yeah. You know, that whole government
Section
assistance.
A and food stamps.
Hey, man.
And let me say this.
Totally.
There's times where you have to depend on that. Okay? There's times where during the pandemic, people have to, you know, as a matter of fact, if it was me and if I had to, I will too.
Definitely.
No taxes.
Oh, yeah.
I swipe that little card.
They have their benefits. They do.
But you do not supposed to be so codependent on government assistance. It's used for your transition. Yeah. To get to your prosperity point, to get to your promised land. It's not used to just use it your whole entire life. Definitely. There's people that may have lost their jobs. You may have come from a family where it was you guys lived in poverty and that's all you know. But it's not meant for you to stay on welfare for your entire time of living and never live to your full capacity in God. It's not meant for that.
Yeah. Another one, I do agree that if the person got a poverty mentality, they refuse financial education and financial disciplines. They refuse it. Yeah. Wouldn't want to learn. Couldn't pay them to learn if you gave it to them. There is no discipline. There's like what we were mentioning, like my wife was just saying, profuse spending. Yeah. All these just high habits of just squandering money. Like that's the person with the poverty mentality.
Yeah, and it's not okay. Yeah. Another one, spending $500 on your weave and your hairdo. And your kids don't have food in the fridge. That's a poverty mentality. Okay? How you gonna go out and spend $50 on your nails, $50 on your toes, probably $70 for some of y'all with bunions. Yes. And then go and get a $500 weave, $500 hairdo, and then you go home and your kids crying because there is no food in the refrigerator. The devil is a liar. That's a poverty mentality.
That's that hood stuff. A person with a poverty mentality, they are income driven compared to net worth driven.
Ooh, that's a good one.
They are income driven compared to net worth driven.
Come on.
When you think about just going to just get money, instead of actually owning and instead of actually acquiring something that's worth more than just money in so many words. That's the person with the poverty mentality.
I'm a go there, got no fear, not scared, nah. Revelation, I wanna know who I am. Watching what I'm watching, hearing what I'm hearing, doing
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spoken Truth. Hello, friends. I'm so excited about this show tonight. Listen, if you have not already, go ahead and share with your friends. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Spoken Truth Talk Show. We have some exciting shows coming up. So listen, this show tonight is so awesome because I have a person that I respect, I admire for her such strength and her wisdom when it's pertaining to the educational system and her experience in the educational system. So I know many of you have questions about sending your kids back to school, and me too. So I decided to bring someone on that knows what she's talking about, that can bring up facts and actually kind of weigh our options with what we're going to do next pertaining to our kids going back to school. So I'm so excited for this person that's about to be back on the show, that's going to be on the show. She hasn't been on the show yet, but this person that's going to be on the show now, she's going to enlighten us with knowledge and truth pertaining to the educational system and the pandemic. So I'm bringing her in now. Hello, Dr. B. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited you're on the show, girl. So listen, I just want them to know a little bit about yourself before we dive into the questions that all of us want to know. So tell them about yourself.
Okay. Well, a little bit about myself. First and foremost, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I'm a mom and I'm an educator. I've been on this journey in education for, I want to say 19 years. I lose track. Wow. It's been a while, but let's see, 15 of it, I was a classroom teacher, and I'm going into my fourth year as building level administration.
Wow.
So it's been a long time, but it's been a rewarding journey. Something else, like you said, I've been knowing you also for a long time. I think, what's it, 15, 16 years, maybe 17?
It's been a long time.
Yes.
So listen, I am excited because I've been knowing you for a very long time, but we have a certain relationship where we can bounce things off each other, and we're constantly want to be in a know-how. So that's what I do know from you. I can be like, hey, do you know about this? What's going on? So you definitely have the research analyst type of wisdom. So I love to hear your insight pertaining to the school district. You guys, like she said, she's been in this for about 19 years and on the administration back end of educational system for about 4 or 5 years. So she knows more about the educational system and what we need to expect. So I just want to pick your brain on tonight. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I will definitely try my best to answer the question.
You have the experience, and so that's exactly what matters. So we know what's been going on. So the Board of Education has reopened schools. So it's the topic is hot. It's very controversial. Yes, and as of August 21st, 25 of the largest school districts in the U.S. has chosen remote online learning. And also they have backup options, whereas for remote, hybrid, or in-person learning. And so I really want to ask you about this. First, what's the effects of the COVID-19 that has on the educational system? What's the pros and cons with sending our kids back to school?
Well, first of all, there could be a lot of pros and a lot of cons to this. Yeah. Like you said, it is a hot topic. And it's a very heated topic on both sides because you have parents that are passionate about not only their kids going back to school, but being active in extracurricular activities. Yeah. And you also have the safety concerns of not only the students, but also the teachers, staff. So it's a whole lot to think about. But if we look at some of the pros, I think the first thing is just caused us as educators, not only in the U.S., but just globally, to rethink how we deliver instruction to the students. Because back in March, we were kind of, when everything started to shut down, we went online immediately. And so it really had caused us to rethink how we deliver instruction to the students.
Exactly.
Another thing I would say, another pro, it is really calls teachers. They've always been really good at collaboration, but it's really allowed teachers to have more autonomy and given them back the power to teach what they do best. And not have a lot of the concerns with testing, and even though it's still an important part, but just to build those relationships, get to know your kids, touch on a lot of that social emotional needs that students need, that a lot of times that was kind of on the, I don't want to say on the back burner, but didn't get a lot of attention because of the other more pressing needs to be proficient on your testing and meet all of those state standards. I think another something else that's a pro to all of this is that it's leveled the playing field. So where you would have students that were, say, wanting to go to an Ivy League school, but they couldn't because of ACT scores or SAT scores. Now with COVID-19 and the testing, a lot of colleges has eliminated that process altogether. And so it's really provided just a level playing field. Students that you would not think that would have an opportunity to do things, they are now being able to granted those opportunities.
That's amazing.
It really is. It really is. Some of the cons, and I don't know if you would see this as a con or a pro, but just the fact that it's shed light on some of the areas in education that necessarily might not have, they've always been hot button topics like equity, but it's really brought it into the forefront, like the digital divide, when we all in March had to go online, and the number of districts that did not go one-to-one and have devices for their students. Or you think about the rural areas that didn't have internet connectivity. So it's just brought a lot of those things to the forefront too, that in the past may not have been, they've been present, but may not have been on the top of the list to address. Also, just looking at safety concerns as far as buildings. A lot of districts, say like in the urban areas, they've for years have had to work in conditions that were not suitable for students. But now it's like, well, we are going to have to address this because you can't send students back to school with the ventilation systems that are not up to par. And so some of those things is just bringing to light, over the years that, they've been there, but now it's just shining a light on situations. So.
That's to me, that strike a chord because, I come from the urban side and coming from a poverty area, I went to Vashon. I went to some of the schools in the Missouri St. Louis School District. And when you talk about how this pandemic kind of switched the game a little bit, where it had to highlight some of these areas where it wasn't functioning well, I believe back then it really would have helped a lot of us being in school. And we didn't have the digital needs. We didn't have anything, we had passionate teachers, so I give a shout out to those teachers that was working in those conditions, probably barely complaining, but they still went to work to teach our kids. And so that's good that you mentioned that, because back then, if we would have had a little bit of that, I think we probably would have been better off. We probably been a little better, back in the day, because we was just, it was a whole nother level. And so that's a good point. To what you just
said. Something else to add, I don't mean to cut you off, but to jump in, you made a very good point that teachers, they continued to do what they do because they were passionate and they loved it. And one thing that I can say, that even though you might see teachers that are out protesting and not wanting to go back to school, it's important to look at the why of why they don't want to go back to school. It's not because they don't want to go back because they don't want to teach the kids. It's more to that. But you have about 90% of teachers, and there's very few that don't love the kids. And they are in it because they love what they do, and they are still, regardless of what's going on. I know even in my own district, you have teachers that are jumping in, learning technology that they've never learned before. They're setting up digital classrooms in their basement. They're doing everything that they can to make sure that the students still don't miss a beat with their education. So, I think that that's a very good point that you brought up, that teachers still are doing. Back then, when you and me were in school, they're still doing the same thing. They still love what they do. And so, I mean, I think that we still need to, give shout outs and support to teachers, even though, you might see them on the news, out and, protesting and what have you. It's not because they don't want to be physically in the building with their students.
Exactly, because I know I was a heathen. I know I was a lot of their nerves, okay? So shout out to all of my teachers that had to deal with me, all 10 of my schools. So, Dr. B, I have another question for you. Okay. What is the decision-making process behind the reopening schools? Because I know a lot of people are concerned. What are some steps that they're taking to prevent the issues on a lot of our hearts? What are some of those reopening steps that they are doing during this process?
Oh, wow. So that's a lot entailed in that question. So first thing, I think that what's important to know is that education, as it is for public education, it's the responsibility is given to the state and to the local level. Mm-hmm. And so when there is a pandemic like this, under the U.S. Constitution, under Amendment 10, it's given over to the states to decide what they want to do. And so you have states that the governor has stepped in and made the decision that students are going to go back to school. Like in Florida, he made the decision that students will return back to school. He gave a date, and then he gave recommendations for the local school systems to follow. Like where I'm at in Missouri, our governor, he made the decision that to give it to the local, the local school districts to make the decision. And so when you look at the decision-making process, whether it's on the state level or if it's on the local level, there's still a lot that's entailed into it. It's just not an overnight decision. You might see, and you might think, why are they doing this? There's no win-win in this. There's going to be sides that are not happy. But when you look at it, say for instance, with our district, there was a process where there were all stakeholders involved. There were teachers that were on the committee. There were parents. There were building level administrators. There were central office. They all came together. They surveyed the parents, to get their feedback, surveyed staff to get their feedback on the reopening plan, and then they bring it to the Board of Education. And the Board of Education is like the governing over the local school district. And so they make the final decision. But when looking at reopening, there's just a lot that goes into it. And I think it's important to know that it's just not a quick decision. There's also a reopening plan that comes in place. And if you are in question about what your reopening plan is for your district, you can look on your district website. They have listed out what the mitigation steps, all of those things are entailed on there. There's a decision-making matrix that most of the states are following, that it has to say the number of COVID cases have to be below a certain amount before you're able to send your students back to school. Now, whether all districts are following that's to be in question. I mean, there's some districts that are not. And so, and we're seeing, on the news results because of that. But there's just a lot entailed into that whole process.
Yeah, and that's another thing, because you did see schools that go back. Here in Colorado, it was a couple of schools that went back, I think a week ago, and they ended up seeing that there were kids that tested positive for COVID, so they had to shut it down and go back full remote. And so that is something that it depends on what area and what schools. Like she said, it can be on that local level where that particular school district, the governor can make a decision, but he leave it up for that school district to make the decision. So it has a lot, too many moving parts to it. So that definitely explained the reopening process and what's involved. So I thank you for that. Now, the question that we all wants to know, okay? Because I am that mama bear. I'm like, hold on, let's pull this back a bit. And so I want to make sure that we have a scope and not being biased. But we want to make sure we put it out there, and it's the parents' decision on what they want to do. And I do understand there's some parents out there that cannot, it's only one option. And that's to go ahead and put our kids back in school. So it's only one. And I do understand that. But we want to make sure we have all the information needed so that we can make a decision as parents on what to do next. So, is it safe to send my kids, our kids, back to school? And what are the steps to keep them safe in the districts? What are they talking about in educational system to keep them safe? And is it safe to send them back to school?
Oh, wow. So, so first of all, before we can look at whether it's safe to send them back into the school setting, I think it's also important to look at what mitigations is taking place in the community, because we can send them back into the school, but they're not at the school 24/7. So we can send them in there. We can have all of the 20 layers of mitigation in place, but then they go back to their home and they go back to their communities. And if there is no second layer of support, say if there's no mask mandates, if there are no reduction in numbers at, say, the local bars and restaurants, then it kind of, I don't want to say it kind of, it just causes I'll give an example, like in Florida. Okay, so Florida, the governor made a mandate for all of the students to go back to school, and he wanted them back in full capacity. Well, if they're going back in full capacity and the state never really shut down and there was never really mask mandates for people to wear, and then the students are back and then there's a major outbreak. So you can put all of these things in place, but then if there's no support from the other, the community, then it kind of,
kind of defeat the purpose, though.
Yeah, it kind of does.
It defeats the purpose. We're sending them back to school, but we're not taking those precautions in that particular area or state. Then it's like, okay, they're going to get it due to the fact that we don't have that balance. And so, so I do understand what you're saying with that. What are some, help us.
So then if we go to the next step and we look at districts and what they're doing, each district throughout the United States, nothing is consistent. You have some areas that they're the same, but some are not. So I could speak to my district, some of the things that we have in place, and you can go on your district's website and you can see what things that they do have in place, and kind of make the decision for yourself if it is safe for your child to go back to school. But some of the safety steps that are in place, one is that it is mandatory for all persons that are inside of the school building to wear a mask. I know for certain in the state of Georgia, if you saw on the news where you saw the picture of the high school where all of the kids were in a crowded hallway without wearing masks.
Yeah, they have to shut it down.
They had to shut it down. And one of the reasons is because in their reopening plan, it was a recommendation. It was not a mandate for students to wear masks. It was optional, basically, for them to wear masks.
So
and it was also,
some teenagers ain't gonna be like, well, I'm gonna wear my mask even though we don't have to. They're gonna be like, well, I'm taking this off. It's hot.
And and then also for social distancing, it was if it was feasible. So it wasn't really written out in stone, some of those steps. So I think that that's important to look into if you're making the decision to send your child back or not to send your child back. If you look at those recommendations and seeing if they're actually a recommendation, which is just a suggestion, or if it's actually a mandate that this needs to be followed. So one of the things in our district, it is a mandate for all persons that are in the building to wear a mask. Second, we have social distancing in place. We have floor markers to divide. It specifically says 6 feet apart. We have in our classrooms, they're taped off in the classroom. We have the thermometer or where you take the temperature, instead of doing the little forehead, little forehead thermometer, what you do. Our district has purchased the stand-up temperature taker, so it kind of looks like a metal detector.
Oh, that's amazing.
So you can walk through and not have to be, in close contact with the students. Also, there's the electrostatic spray, which is like the high-power disinfect to clean the buildings. Also, they called in an engineering company to do an assessment of the ventilation systems within the buildings to make sure that they're up to par. We also have district-wide where all buildings have to keep doors open, windows open. So just those extra steps on top of just wearing a mask and just washing hands. There's other steps that you could take to ensure safety. We have the visors that have like the clear, face protectors.
Yes, I need some of those.
We have like the little, what are the little smocks, the little plastic things to cover. And I'm saying all of this because my district is 75 to 80% free and reduced. So we have, it's high in poverty, but they've made it important that this is important. If we're going to send our school back to school, then our students back to school, then we're going to, take those extra steps. So I think it's important when you're making that decision to not only look at what your school's doing, but look at what the community around you. And then if you're in neighboring states, like I'm in Missouri, so Kansas, you can go maybe 5 miles and you're over in Kansas, or like you were in St. Louis, you can go a couple of miles and you're in
Illinois.
So not only know what's going on in your state, but in other states, because if you have people going in and out, that can also increase the spread. So just
that's very good wisdom. That's very good wisdom, because it's a lot of schools I know for sure not doing that, especially here in Colorado. And so I think that's important that you know what are the safety measures at your school and your district and your states. And like she said, even the state that's surrounding your state where there's in and out traffic. And so I think that's a very good point you're making, Dr. B, because a lot of people just sending them back and don't know what are the safety measures, because you have kids that have grandparents, you have kids that have parents that have borderline medical issues that can, if with this pandemic that can cause really a lot of harm than help. And so we want to make sure we take those different type of measures, as she was speaking, to make sure we know what's going on. So that's a good point, which I'm going to have to check that out as well with my son's school district.
So there's another thing. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, keep going. We want to know, girl. Come on.
With because I know they're in private schools, so you can go in a lot of times in private schools and do visits and see exactly what it's like. When public schools is kind of, you can't really go in and walk around and do all of that. But private schools, they're a little bit more open, and so that might be an option too if you're not feeling safe, to ask to do a visit to see exactly what.
Oh yeah, because I'll be peeping it out. I'll be going up in there. What y'all doing? Boys, you wash your hands. That kid pick it, get your hand out your nose. So yeah, that'll be me rolling up in there. And so that's good. Thank you for that. So let me ask you this. What if for the parents that work, okay, that I know is many out there, they can't do what most of us can do, where we work from home. We have jobs where we're already remote. And it's some jobs out there that wasn't remote, but they made it whereas you can go remote. And so that was definitely amazing for some of those jobs to do that. And, but we got parents that they can't, they work, whereas it's essential. You have to go in, whether it's factories, whether it's restaurants, whether it's the marketplaces that we go to get our food. So it's parents that have to work. And they don't feel safe sending their kids back to school. What are some of the options that they have right now?
Well, like you said in the beginning, not all schools are meeting face-to-face. So know what your district's options are that they have for your students. Some of the districts are doing totally remote, which is online. Some districts are doing a hybrid model where they have a certain amount of students that will, once the numbers are at a certain place, that they will send a certain amount of students back into the building. And so and then the other half will stay at home and be online, and then they'll flip flop. So like an A day, your child will go into the school, and the other half will be at home, and then on B days they'll flip flop, and they'll do that back and forth, and then have one day off where they clean the building.
Yeah.
So know your options. Know if it's a hybrid, if it's full virtual, or if it's just you have to go in face to face. With that being said, another thing, if you have to go to work, know the laws, know what you can get support from. And I know in March, there was the Family First COVID Act that was passed. Yeah. And then there's also the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. Mm-hmm. And so depending on what your specific need is, there is funding available for unemployment if you just have to take that route. Now, I can't say that everybody will receive unemployment because I don't know, your specific situation.
Make that disclaimer.
Make that disclaimer.
Don't be saying they said we can have unemployment on the fucking True Talk Show. No, we said check it. Okay.
So make sure that you read that fine print and see if it works. But I know there's an area in there that if childcare is not available or schools are closed, and there is, I'm pretty sure there was a part in there about virtual, but I would just check that out. Also, Google is your best friend. There is all kind of resources out there that you can look up. There's a public library. The public library does online tutoring help for students as long as you have a library card, so you can get help for your child if they're virtual and you have to be at work and they're struggling at home and they don't know what to do. When you get back home, you can pull up those lessons. And if say you don't know how to do, because there's stuff that the math, some of that I don't understand.
And you've been in the system, you've been in the school district for 19 years. So just imagine some parents like, I don't know what they're doing. Math is so different. Let me just say this. Math is so different now. Like, can you make it a little bit? Can we go back to carrying the numbers? What is all this? Nobody got time for that. And so I'm definitely, I'm at home, my kids, and I'm be like, you know what, Corey, come on. That's the engineer. He know how to do all those numbers. I can't do it. I'm sorry. Even Joel, he's in 4th grade, and I'm like, what? So yeah, but anyway, yes.
The public library could help with homework help. There's also something that's under the school choice, and I don't really talk a lot about school choice because I'm in public education, and we want funding and dollars to go to public education.
Absolutely.
But one of the, I'm being honest, but one of the options under school choice is pods or micro schools.
Yeah.
And so basically what that is that parents, you have 2 or more families that get together and they decide that they would like to basically have like a little mini school. And so there's funding available for that. If that's something that you're interested in, there are grants available that they're giving to parents that are interested in starting that. Also, there are virtual learning sites. So let's say that you have to go into work and your boss is not flexible with you. There are, I know in my area with the Parks and Rec and also with the Boys and Girls Club, they have merged together and they have virtual learning sites. And so basically what that is that you send your child there, and it's like a childcare basically for older students, but they go in and they have a certified teacher in there and they are helping them through their assignments all day long like they were in the classroom. Mm-hmm. So that's another option that you could possibly look into and see if that's available in your area.
You guys hear that? That's a lot of knowledge. That was a lot of nuggets now. So you guys, we have things out there in place that can assist us in educating our children and still staying safe. And so I love the pods. I think that the learning pods is something new. And I'm telling you, now 2020 technology have soared. And it's now time to grab hold to technology, because who would have known right now in 2020, we'll be thinking of learning pods to send our kids to school. Exactly. So this is a whole nother level. 2020 got knocked it out the box, but I think it was necessary. So what the enemy meant for our bad, God has worked it out for our good, for real. Definitely. And so we got to step our game up for real in 2020. And so another question I have for you, what are some future considerations for our children? Because I know since, this pandemic, a lot of things gonna be put in our lap or forced upon us or whatever the case may be. So what are some future considerations we have as parents that we have to take into consideration in the future for our children because of the pandemic?
One that just comes to mind right away is just because it's not in the what's slowly but surely taking a forefront in the news, but vaccines. And I think that for parents that especially that are not in support of vaccines, this is something to kind of keep on the radar, because if you go back again to the laws and know exactly, when things were passed and what policies are being put in place. Back in 1905 when vaccines were, saying that basically you have to get your child vaccinated to go to school. There were some exemptions that were put in place down the line for religious reasons or for philosophical reasons. Well, now I know for sure 5 states that have taken away those exemptions. There's also 11 states that in a case of a pandemic like we're in, they can override those exemptions. So let's say that the vaccine comes out for COVID and one of those 11 states, they can override that and say, all kids need to have this vaccine in order to return back to school. I know currently in the news, Massachusetts has mandated all students have the flu vaccine before they can return back to school. So it's gradually, taking, so that's something to take into consideration, especially if you are not in support of vaccines, or if you are a little leery of, being the first in line to get the vaccine. So that's probably something that you need to kind of think about. Something else, like we talked a little bit about in the beginning, just leveling the playing field, and which is something that is amazing. Giving students that would not have the opportunity before, now you have the opportunity. So there's no more like, I couldn't do this. There's opportunities available if you really want it. And so one is just the rethinking of acceptances into colleges, just like we talked about before, the waiving of the ACT, the SAT, looking at state testing for K-12. Last year, they waived all state testing. And I'm not sure what's going to happen this year, but just taking consideration of that. And then also just rethinking college in general, just the whole college process. I know Google has come out with Grow with Google program. A little bit about Grow with Google. It's really, you don't have to go to college for 4 years anymore. They have a program that takes, I think it said on average 3 to 6 months to complete the program. After you complete that program, they are matching you with high-paying jobs and a high job field. And so you can come out in 3 to 6 months making $60,000 to $90,000, which you would have to go to college for sometimes plus years in order to do that.
Sometimes even get a master's. I mean,
exactly.
Not just bachelor's anymore. A lot of employers want you to have a master's in order to get that next pay grade level. So that's amazing. Exactly.
And it's at an affordable rate. I mean, the last time I checked, I think it was like $49 a month. And they were offering scholarships, need-based scholarships for people just because of the pandemic. So just, those are a few of the things to take. There's many things, but that's just a few of them to think about.
You guys go look that up. That's amazing. So listen, we've talked about so many things, and I really, it kind of opened up my mind to a lot of things as well. To do a lot of research on the different areas, even the areas that surrounding where I'm located, about what they're doing with the reopening the schools and what's their plan. And like you said, the school district in Missouri, in your area, they took many measures, the ventilation systems, the temperature check where it's none touch. So I think those are good. So, and let me tell you, one of the things we got out of it was those ACTs and the college and the Google. I mean,
yes.
Listen, I better put them kids in school. You better go.
I wish that was in place when I was in school.
Okay. And I know it's going to be many grants. I'm telling you guys, I'm telling you right now that because of this pandemic, that there'll be many grants and free schooling and college, and a lot of people, I'm telling you, government going to set things in place for your kids. So let me tell you, you need to right now tell your kids, listen, you need to think about college. Okay. If they're out of school, they need to think about college, because there will be more grants for your kids pertaining to college because of this. And so let's not look down on what's going on. I'm telling you, there's some back end. God is doing things. Come on, God is doing things in the back end. So, I mean, I'm not mad at it at all. You know, my 2020 is brighter. I know a lot of people like, oh my goodness, but it's working for my good. And so tell us this. And this is the last thing that I really want you to give these parents advice. What can you say to the parents right now during this pandemic? What advice can you give? Can you please just kind of pour into us at this time and give us knowledge and hope? I mean, well, may not hope, but give us some knowledge and some wisdom on what's going on, so that the parents can kind of have knowledge, wisdom, you know. So help us out and talk to us for a bit.
I think first and foremost is if you don't have a prayer life, to establish a prayer life, and make sure that you are hearing the voice of God, because right now a lot of things that appear one way are not really what they are.
My God.
And so you have to not only see them for what they are, but go deeper and not only look at surface level of what's going on, and ask those tough, difficult questions, and be okay with the answers that you're going to receive, you know, as a result of it. But don't be afraid to ask those difficult questions. And next, I would say to use wisdom, to have wise counsel around you, because there is a lot of numbers that are going on in the media. And when you look at data, it's just to inform you, but it's not to incite fear. And so the thing that wise counsel does, it kind of levels out your thinking. Like Brandy said at the beginning, we can bounce things off of each other. Sometimes we don't always agree on everything, but we can bounce things off of each other. And where I didn't see something, she saw it, you know, and it gives you different perspectives. So get wise counsel on the decisions that you're making. So after you're hearing the voice of God, make sure that you're around a community of people that won't always tell you what you want to hear, but you can get wise counsel, you know, on the decisions that you're making. Next, I would say just to inform yourself of what's going on. There are so many policies that are being in place right now. And if we get caught up and distracted with, you know, social media and all these other things, we are not going to make informed decisions. One of the things, and I didn't mention this earlier, but it just came to mind when I'm saying this, is that now it's backed by the White House, is that they are considering teachers. It's coming down the pike. It's not really in effect right now, but that they could be considered essential workers. And if that is the case, then that means if a teacher is exposed but does not show symptoms, they will still be required to go to work. And so there are already in Tennessee and also in Florida, there are some local districts that have wrote that into their policy. And so if you are not staying abreast of what's going on in your district and knowing, you know, exactly what's going on, and you're making decisions, you know, based on, you know, whatever, you just need to make sure that you're informed about the decisions that you're making, and not let the news or the data just, you know, overwhelm you to fear, but make sure you're making those sober decisions. Next, I would say that if you are not liking the decisions that are taking place, to find your voice some way. We don't all have, you know, we all have different abilities, you know, and they're not all the same. but find your voice in. Right now, there's so many different things that you can be passionate about. Mm-hmm. So if you are passionate about, say, for instance, I don't like the decisions that's being made in my local school district. Well, the school district officials, the Board of Education, are elected officials. So you can vote and make your voice known that, the next time the election comes around, they didn't handle this the way I think that they should. So, vote.
That's good.
There are committees that you can join at your child's school to voice your opinion about things. Like with the reopening, we had parents on the reopening committee that voiced their concerns. Also at the Board of Education meetings, you can go and ask to be on to speak on the agenda on issues that you are really passionate about. So there's many things that you can do if you don't like what's happening, versus just taking to social media and posting on your feed all day long and annoying your people that's on your page. There's things that, I'm being honest, there's things that you can do to make your voice known if you are not liking things that are happening. And then the last thing I would probably say is whether you're sending your child back to school or your child is staying at home, one, be patient with their teachers. They're going through this for the first time, just like you are. Show grace to them, partner with them, because, they are in it just like you, and we're all going through this together. And be flexible because things are changing rapidly. The last time I looked at numbers or plans for a district, they have changed, the next day, literally. So just know that things are changing. There's no best answer. There's just, so I think that's all I got.
That wasn't all. That was a lot. Just to piggyback on what she was saying, one, pray. You definitely at this season, you can't be listening to what someone say, what someone is doing. You have to pray and seek God for yourself. What's best for your family? See, a lot of people will push their agenda on you, but you need to talk to God and say, God, what you want us to do, our family, because God knows the plans he has for us. We don't know, but he knows. And so we need to partner with God. We need to ask God, what do you want me to do? And actually allow him to answer. Some of y'all, God ain't said nothing. You talking about God ain't told you that. You just, people do that. They be like, yeah, God told me, really? And then something happened. I guess I really didn't hear from God. Yeah, you didn't. Talk to God, and whatever God telling you for you and your family is for you. Okay, and accept wise counsel, like she said. Blessed is a man that does not accept counsel from the ungodly. You can't be going to your girlfriends and them that don't talk to God and don't know God and talking about what you think I should do. Of course, she's gonna give you what she thinks and not what God says. And so we definitely need to make sure God is the forefront of all our decisions pertaining to our kids. I'm going to tell you now, me and my husband had to go to God, what you want us to do? And we knew it was God. Once he answered, but God allowed doors to open pertaining to that decision. So we need to make sure we partner with God with this. Ask God, what do I need to be doing? What should I do? What works for me? And so that was good. That was wisdom within itself, and educating yourself. Like I said, I had to bring on the big guns. I'm like, come on, Dr. B, let's get on this show and talk about this. Tell me what's going on. We may not talk every day, but when we do talk, it's straight business and pleasure, of course. But we talk, we're trying to see what's going on, what we need to be doing, making moves. That's good to have someone you can go to and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. What you talking about? What you think? You know what I mean? And we partner with God with our decisions, even though we're talking, but God's begin to move and we know, all right, this is what God is saying. And so it's good to partner with friends and have friends or accountability, your leaders you can go to. And then you talk to God as well, because we want to make sure we on one accord when it comes to God and what we need to be doing, especially with our kids, because I don't play with my kids now. Okay. I don't play with my kids now. I play with many things, but my kids, that's off limits. So I want to make sure I'm in right standing and know what God is saying. Listen, Dr. B, this show was so amazing. I'm so happy that you came. Tell us, how can people reach you? Not your number.
Oh my God.
Not your number, but can you please, not your number, okay? Don't be sliding in her DMs now. But tell the people where they can follow you on social media.
Well, I have a Facebook, but I'm not really on there.
But people gonna be reaching out to you now because you done dropped that knowledge. So we need to know how we can reach you.
Probably the best way would be through email or through Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot. So probably through either Twitter or through email.
Okay, what's your Twitter address and your email?
My Twitter is mblakely2. And then my email address is blakeleym12@gmail.com. I can't guarantee you that I will be able to answer all your questions, but I've been in the game I have a pretty good network, so I can direct you in the right direction if I can't answer it.
Oh yeah, definitely. You guys, when it's pertaining to education, definitely you can reach her at Twitter, because I'm telling you, she have the knowledge, and I'm so excited that she came today. You guys, listen, this has been so good to have Dr. B on the show. We definitely gonna have her back on the show. What y'all think? Come on, what you think? We definitely need to have her back on the show to talk about some other things. I got some topics that I want to throw at her anyway, and some topics that we have discussed, but I think it needs to be on this platform. I think y'all need to hear it. And so thank you guys for joining. Let's talk about the school opening. So thank you so much for joining our talk show. We can't wait for you guys for next week. We have an amazing show that's coming up. We have someone that you would love and adore, talking about the trenches of marriage, talking about with her just being in a blended family. So we'll see you next week with that. You guys, thank you for watching The Spoken Truth.